Welcome, everyone. We're doing a deep dive today into something, well, really fundamental: how we perceive the world. Maybe specifically for you listening right now.
Yeah, and the core idea, it's really fascinating, isn't it? That what we experience isn't, well, it's not like a direct feed of reality.
Exactly. It's more like something our own minds build up.
The construction.
Right, a construction. We're going to explore how your mind is actually, actively shaping the reality you live in.
It's definitely less about just passively soaking information up and much more about an active process of creation, wouldn't you agree?
Totally.
And to really get a feel for this, maybe picture this.
Yeah.
You're standing in a forest, it's misty, dawn is just breaking.
Okay.
The fog swirling around, everything looks a bit vague, indistinct. You might think you clearly see a path stretching out ahead.
All right, it makes sense in the fog.
But then you take a step forward and poof, it
Yeah.
just dissolves. Maybe it was just a trick of the light or, a branch lying funny on the ground.
Ugh, okay. That moment of, like, wait, what? Where something you thought was solid reality just vanishes.
Exactly that.
That's a perfect little window into this gap we're talking about, isn't it? The space between the raw world out there and how your brain puts it together.
It's like a filter or maybe a veil between you and what's really there.
And this veil, as we'll explore, it's woven from all sorts of things, right? Shaping what you perceive, often without you even realizing it.
Oh, absolutely. It feels direct, immediate.
Yeah, but that feeling itself is part of this whole fascinating puzzle.
I mean, think about something as simple as seeing a tree. You look at it
Hmm.
and it just feels like, well, you're just seeing the tree, unfiltered.
Sure, seems straightforward.
But what's really going on is your eyes are gathering light, reflections off its surface. Your brain then has to take these bits, these fragments of information, and piece them together.
Like a jigsaw puzzle.
Sort of, yeah. Where your mind is constantly filling in the missing pieces, making these educated guesses based on everything you see before, even how you're feeling right now.
And it's not random how it does that. There are principles.
Exactly. Our minds have these inherent ways of organizing things. Like when you look at any scene, you automatically separate objects from their backgrounds.
Okay, yeah.
If you focus on that tree, it becomes the main thing, right? Sharp, defined. The sky, the ground around it, they kind of recede.
That's the figure and the ground.
Precisely. We naturally create that distinction. But here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. That distinction isn't fixed.
How so?
Well, imagine a sudden gust of wind rustles the leaves, just so. And for a moment, it creates a pattern. Maybe it looks a bit like a face in the branches.
Oh, yeah. I've seen things like that. Suddenly the tree itself might fade back a bit and this fleeting face jumps out. That's what you're focusing on now.
Exactly. It shows that what you perceive isn't just about what's out there. It's also deeply tied to your internal landscape. What you're paying attention to, what you expect, even unconscious biases can shift what becomes figure and what stays ground.
It's like your mind has its own unique way of highlighting things, putting a spotlight here or there.
You could think of it like a custom camera lens, maybe. Shaped by evolution, your culture, your personal history.
But not a neutral lens.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
This one actively applies effects, doesn't it? It zooms in, it blurs, it adjusts contrast, often without you consciously telling it to.
Hmm.
These are the cognitive filters we're talking about.
What about something like color? That feels pretty objective. Red is red, right?
Well, you'd think so,
Hmm.
but even something that basic seems influenced by, say, language. Research shows that people whose languages have fewer specific color words sometimes struggle to differentiate shades that others see as clearly distinct.
Wow. So language itself can shape how you see color.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It suggests how deeply conditioned our perception is. Your whole perceptual field, everything you sense, is structured by these learned patterns, these cultural frames. What feels completely natural and immediate to you is actually learned.
And that goes beyond just sight, right? Like social stuff too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about a conversation you witness. Two people can see the exact same interaction, same words, same body language, and walk away with totally different feelings. One feels connection, the other senses tension.
Right. They're both watching the same scene, but their internal lenses, those filters, transform it into completely different experiences for them.
It really underlines that key Gestalt idea.
Hmm.
The whole is different from the sum of its parts. Your perception actively constructs meaning, weaving fragments into narratives that feel seamless, even if they aren't direct reflections at all.
So to really drive this home, imagine walking through one of those mirror mazes at a fun fair.
Okay.
Every reflection is a version of you, but none of them are the complete picture, right? Some stretch you tall, others make you short, some flip you, some distort you wildly.
Right, they're all warped in some way.
And trying to navigate that maze using only one of those reflections as your guide, you'd be totally lost, relying on these partial, skewed views.
That's a really powerful analogy for how you move through life, isn't it? Relying on perceptions that are similarly fragmented and, yes, kind of distorted in their own ways.
Your brain is constantly prioritizing certain things, making them the figure of your attention.
While pushing others into the ground, exactly. All to create a sense of order, stability for you.
But that coherence, that order, it comes at a price.
Mm.
You end up missing so much because it falls outside that narrow focus. Like walking into a room and immediately noticing, I don't know, a picture on the wall is crooked. You zero in on that, the figure.
And you might completely miss someone standing right next to you because they're part of the ground in that moment.
Exactly. That selective attention driven by this figure ground thing creates these blind spots in our perception.
So the natural question for you is, why? Why does your brain work this way? Why not just give you all the raw data unfiltered?
Yeah, wouldn't that be better? More accurate?
Well, the answer probably lies in survival, in efficiency. Evolution shaped our perceptual systems to prioritize speed and usefulness over absolute accuracy. Imagine having to consciously analyze every single leaf on that tree we mentioned.
Before deciding if it's dangerous or useful, yeah, you wouldn't last long.
Instead, your brain evolved these shortcuts, this amazing ability to impose order on chaos by finding patterns. It's incredibly effective for getting around, but the trade-off is you lose that raw, unstructured view of reality.
You trade completeness for clarity, ambiguity for a sense of certainty.
Often without even realizing you've made the trade. Which brings us to a really crucial point for you. What are these cognitive filters exactly? How do they dictate what you see, and maybe more importantly, what you fail to see every day?
Before we dive into the specific filters, maybe think about that cocktail party effect.
It's a classic example.
You're in a crowded, noisy place, a cafe, a party, chatter everywhere, clinking glasses, music, it's overwhelming. And then, bam, you hear your name called from across the room.
Your attention just snaps to it, right? It perfectly shows how your attention acts as a filter, amplifying what's relevant to you while somehow suppressing everything else.
But that filtering isn't perfect. What if? What if the voice calling your name was just your imagination? A misinterpretation?
Or, maybe more concerningly, what if you missed a really critical warning sound because it didn't fit what you were currently focused on?
Right. These scenarios really highlight the double-edged sword of these filters. They help us function.
But they also make us vulnerable to mistakes, to oversights. And this vulnerability often comes from this tension between our need for closure, wanting things to make sense, to fit a pattern.
And the importance of staying open, of noticing things that don't fit.
Exactly. True openness means embracing a bit of uncertainty, paying attention to subtle cues, resisting that urge to just jump to the conclusion that fits what you already think.
Finding that balance seems key then for breaking free from some of these cognitive traps that limit our view.
Absolutely. As we continue, keep that tension in mind for yourself. Closure versus openness. It's going to be really central to understanding how your view of reality gets, well, customized.
So understanding these mechanisms isn't just like an intellectual game.
No, not at all. It's a step towards maybe gaining a bit more agency, more conscious control over how you interact with the world. So, okay, how do these filters actually work? Let's think about how our minds tend to group related things together.
To make coherent patterns out of what could just be chaos.
Precisely. But that very drive for coherence can sometimes lock you into rigid ways of seeing. It makes it hard to spot things that don't fit, or even consider other ways of looking at it.
Like those ambiguous images, the vase or the two faces.
That's a perfect example.
You see one first, and it can be genuinely hard work to switch your perception to see the other one.
Exactly. Once your brain locks onto a particular figure ground setup, it kind of resists changing unless there's a strong reason, new information, or you deliberately make an effort to shift focus.
That shows the principle of stability. The mind prefers consistency.
Yes, it craves that stability, even if it means overlooking things that contradict the current view.
And then there's that powerful drive towards closure you mentioned, that need to complete incomplete patterns.
It's incredibly strong, isn't it? And it served us well. Evolutionarily helps make quick sense of fragmented information. Think about seeing just a few letters of a sign through fog.
Right. You don't wait for the fog to lift. Your brain just jumps in, fills the gaps, makes a guess at the word.
Usually it works. But sometimes you misread it, potentially with consequences.
This constant perceptual hypothesis testing, as you put it, making guesses based on limited data and past experience.
Yes. While it's efficient, it can definitely trap you in these cognitive loops. It reinforces your existing biases, makes you resistant to rethinking your first assumptions.
Like if you get a short email from someone you've had issues with before.
You might immediately read it as hostile or rude.
Yeah, and totally miss the possibility that they're just super busy or stressed. Your brain just snaps to the familiar negative story.
And the danger isn't just individual mistakes, is it? It's when these closures become collective, shared within groups, cultures.
We can all end up sharing the same perceptual habits, solidifying into these shared illusions.
Which makes it incredibly hard to see new threats or new opportunities because the collective view is just too narrow.
Okay, so if closure is about simplifying and stabilizing, insight is almost the opposite.
In a way, yes. Insight is about transformation. It's that sudden aha moment.
When you see connections you missed before, or a solution just appears.
Exactly. That flash of understanding when the pieces suddenly just click into place. It happens when your whole perceptual field suddenly reorganizes itself. You break free from the usual way of structuring things.
Like struggling with a puzzle, getting nowhere, and then bam, the solution is just obvious.
It really shows that the boundaries you perceive, whether they're physical, conceptual, emotional, are often self-imposed constructions.
And insight is about pushing past those boundaries, expanding your awareness.
Challenging them, yes. Opening yourself up to new possibilities. And interestingly, while that, feels sudden for you,
It usually comes after a period of struggle, right? Of being stuck.
that incubation period is crucial. It allows your mind to sort of loosen its grip on the old, rigid structures. It creates the space for new configurations, new patterns to emerge.
So it's that tension again, breaking things down, differentiation, and then bringing them back together in a new way, integration.
And true insight often feels like that balance point. It's surprising, but once you see it, it feels completely obvious, almost inevitable for you.
Okay, then there's this other interesting idea, a structural link between our internal mental states and the external world, isomorphism.
Right. The idea that the way you organize your thoughts, your internal world, somehow mirrors or resonates with structures you perceive in the external world.
So like certain visual patterns might evoke specific emotions, or abstract ideas like balance feel universally important.
Exactly. Think about our preference for symmetry. We tend to find symmetrical things pleasing. Why? Well, likely because in nature, symmetry often signals health, vitality.
Okay.
But that preference extends beyond just looks for you. You can influence how you evaluate arguments, relationships, even moral questions. You tend to trust things that feel balanced and feel wary of things that seem chaotic or lopsided.
Does this also play into why we fall into those cognitive traps we talked about, mistaking surface similarities for deeper connections?
Absolutely. Think about confirmation bias. Your tendency to seek out information that confirms what you already believe.
Right.
Your mind prioritizes information that fits your existing mental models, the structures you already have. It creates this feedback loop that strengthens those beliefs, even if they're not quite accurate.
But understanding this gives you a tool, maybe, to recognize and dismantle some traps.
That's the hope. By becoming aware of how your internal models are shaping what you see externally, you can start to question your assumptions. You can consciously try out different ways of framing things.
Instead of just grabbing the first pattern you see, asking, okay, wait, what other patterns might be here for me to see?
Precisely. Which brings us maybe to naming some of these common traps, looking at them through this lens. Consider the spotlight effect.
Like a stage spotlight.
Exactly. Your attention focuses narrowly, like that spotlight, illuminating one small area for you, but leaving everything else in shadow.
Creating blind spots, missing important context outside the beam.
And there's tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Related, but slightly different, where that need for closure makes you fixate on just one interpretation. You become resistant to alternatives.
Like looking through a literal tunnel, your view becomes so restricted you block out anything else.
The echo chamber illusion that feels particularly relevant today for you, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, social media feeds, news sources.
When your environment just keeps feeding you similar information, similar viewpoints, you lose access to diversity. That homogeneity reinforces your existing assumptions, even flawed ones. It creates this distorted reality bubble.
And our brains just love patterns, sometimes too much.
That's the pattern addiction for you. You can end up imposing false narratives onto random events, mistaking coincidence for cause and effect, just because the brain is wired to find structure somewhere.
What about ground suppression bias?
That's where you prioritize the figure, the main object or focus, so intensely that you completely overlook crucial background information.
Leading to misunderstandings, missing the bigger picture.
Absolutely. From personal interactions right up to global issues. Focusing on isolated events, blinding yourself to the wider context.
And emotions, of course. They must play a huge role.
Immense. The emotional resonance filter? Your feelings act like colored lenses, don't they?
Yeah.
Amplifying certain things, muting others.
Fear makes neutral things seem threatening. Joy makes things seem wonderful.
Your whole perception can be skewed by your current emotional state.
And finally, the confirmation spiral.
That's getting trapped in that self-reinforcing cycle. You look for evidence confirming what you already think,
Which strengthens the faulty belief.
making you even more resistant to contradictory information. It spirals. These traps are tricky because they weave themselves into everyday life until they just feel like reality itself to you.
But just recognizing them, naming them, that's the crucial first step towards maybe breaking free, expanding your awareness.
It absolutely is.
Which, as we sort of start to wrap up, it really makes you wonder, if the very act of observing changes what you see, can you ever really grasp the world as it actually is?
That's the core paradox, isn't it? The observer effect in perception. When you focus on something, you inevitably change its context by making it the figure.
And pushing everything else into the ground.
Think about walking into a quiet room and suddenly noticing the clock ticking. You're not just passively hearing sound waves, you're actively constructing significance around that ticking for yourself.
It becomes important because I singled it out.
Exactly. And all the other subtle sounds, the fridge humming, wind outside, they fade, not because they stopped, but because they've been relegated to the ground of your awareness.
So the implication for you listening is, every act of observation is also an act of omission. Every time you zoom in on one thing, you're blurring out countless others.
And your brain is so good at smoothing things over, filling gaps, you rarely even notice what you're missing. You might easily mistake your edited version for the whole truth.
But then there's that deeper layer you mentioned, self-observation, turning attention inward.
Right. What happens when you try to examine your own perceptions, your own biases? It creates this hall of mirrors effect.
The act of observing my thoughts changes them.
It seems to. Paying attention to a worry can amplify it. Other thoughts might just vanish because you're not focusing on them.
So trying to understand my own mind isn't revealing objective truths either, but just reflecting my own frameworks back at me. You can't escape the lens.
It certainly seems that way. Which leads to that potentially unsettling question for you. If perception inherently distorts reality and self-observation distorts perception, what hope do you have? Can you ever see things as they really are?
Yeah, that sounds a bit bleak.
But maybe the answer, surprisingly for you, is actually to embrace that very distortion.
How?
Think of looking through stained glass. Each pane filters the light differently, right? Creating unique patterns. No single pane shows pure sunlight.
Each offers a distinct interpretation.
Exactly. Shaped by its unique properties. Maybe your mind is like that stained glass window, refracting raw experience into your own personalized version of reality. Maybe there is no such thing as unfiltered light for you, only infinite variations of filtered illumination.
So that really challenges the whole idea of some objective truth sitting out there, completely separate from my perspective.
Perhaps truth is always relational for you, something that emerges from the interaction between you, the observer, and whatever is being observed.
So chasing this perfect, pure perception might be missing the point.
It might be a bit of a fool's errand, yes. So, if you can't aim for perfect clarity, what then? Maybe shift focus. From seeking certainty to cultivating curiosity in your daily life, think back to those insight moments, those aha experiences. Fleeting maybe, but they show you how flexible your perception can be.
So apply that same principle more broadly. Instead of needing all the answers, get more comfortable with ambiguity. Let new ways of seeing emerge.
That's the idea. And one practical way for you to try this is to consciously play with figure ground in your own life.
How would I do that?
Next time you feel stuck, seeing a situation only one way, an argument, a problem at work, try to deliberately flip it. Ask yourself, what if I shifted my focus completely? What am I currently ignoring in the background that might actually be crucial for me to see?
It might not give immediate answers.
Probably not. But it can open up possibilities, nudge your perspective, create space.
As we finish up this deep dive, it feels important for you, the listener, to remember just how vast and complex perception is. It's not static.
No, it's constantly evolving with your experiences. Every moment is a chance to expand your awareness, question old assumptions, embrace the unknown. It can feel uncomfortable, confronting the limits of your own view, realizing how much you don't know.
But there's also a beauty in that, isn't there? For you.
I think so. Recognizing that reality is just so much richer than any single one of us can possibly grasp, like looking at the night sky.
You see tiny points of light.
But you know, each star is a sun, maybe huge, incredibly far away. Your limited view doesn't make them less grand. It hints at the immense mystery out there.
So our perceptual filters do the same. They don't just obscure reality, they invite us to look deeper, to wonder.
That's a wonderful way to put it. So we leave you with this thought. Maybe the world isn't a puzzle for you to solve, but a mystery for you to inhabit.
And those cognitive traps we talked about. Maybe not just flaws to fix, but invitations to understand yourself and the world more deeply.
And perhaps the most valuable thing you can take away from all this for yourself isn't a neat set of answers, but rather a set of questions to keep exploring in your own life.
How might your perception shift if you allowed yourself to dwell more comfortably in ambiguity?
What hidden dimensions of reality could emerge for you if you loosened your grip, just a bit, on certainty?
And ultimately, what kind of observer do you want to be?
This journey into perception, it's ongoing for you. We really hope this deep dive has sparked some curiosity, maybe encourages you to keep exploring this absolutely fascinating world in your own unique way.